Welcome to Donzi Tech. In this tutorial, we are going to look at how to deploy a Django project to Python anywhere. All right, so here I already have some Django project I'll be using in this demo. So let me use this project. It's an inventory management system. All right, so here I'll just open a folder in my terminal, but first I want to activate the environment I use for this project. Now, why I'm going to activate this environment is because when you are going to deploy your project online, you will need to get all the packages or libraries you used for that particular Django project, and you can easily get them from the environment. But then if you don't have an environment file, it means that you have to run the project. When it gives you an error, you just look for that particular library name and then you install it manually. But then if you have an environment, you can just activate it. And then we use a simple command to get all the libraries we use in that particular project. So that when we are deploying it, we can easily install the packages we use for the project on the server. Right, so let me just activate the environment. So my env is just the name of the environment I have here. So script and then the activate file. Right, so this will now activate my virtual environment. Now, if you're on a Linux-based system, let's say you're using Ubuntu or let's say Mac OS, you have to use this command. You use source, then the name of the environment, and then you would use the / bin and then activate. Right, so you can use this command if you're on any Linux-based system. But then if you're on Windows, you use this approach to activate your environment. Right, so next I'll have to cd into my project, run it to make sure everything works before you deploy. So anytime you want to deploy your project online, just have to make sure that it is working locally before you push it online. Also, we'll need to do some changes in our project settings. So I would open this in the VS Code. Then let me just run the server, Python manage run server. Okay, I'll just copy this and then you test it out to make sure it works before you try to deploy it. All right, so I have the project already running here. So since everything works fine, I will now be able to push it online. But like I said, we'll need to do some settings in our project before we deploy, right? So open your Django project. You open your Django project and then under your settings, we add some few stuff here. Let me increase font size to 20. 20 is better. Let me make it 25. 25. Okay, that's too much. Say 23. Okay, all right. So here, import OS. So when you open the settings.py in your project, you open settings. Okay. Now just scroll down, and then if you changed the path for your template files, so for instance, I changed mine to the base there. If you did these changes, you have to do this. So do os.path.join and then base there like you have before, and then the name of the template folder you created. So you can do this instead of just having it base there and then template. Sometimes when you deploy it online, some servers are not able to locate the template file. So normally you just have to do this to make sure it works. So os.path.join base there, then the same thing you had previously. Now when you scroll down, we have same thing here. So static files _ this. So I would repeat the same thing for this. So os.path, let me expand the list here. os.path.join base there, and then the same thing, static. And then we have static root. So I'd explain this when we deploy it. So static root is just the location where all your static files will be collected to when you deploy it online. So same thing, inside our base there, we would have a folder called static files. You can choose any other name you prefer. And then we have the media, same thing, os.path.join. So base there, and then the media folder. So when you add this to it, you are good to go. So why we are doing this is that sometimes when you deploy it, it's not able to locate some of the files. So to be on the safer side, it's always advisable to use this. So at the top, you just import the OS and then you use os.path.join, then you join the locations or the directories. All right, so with this done, we can now move to deploying our project. But first, we will need to create an account on the PythonAnywhere platform. So here, just type Python anywhere. All right, so here. So if you already have an account with them, you can just straight away sign in. But if you don't have an account, like in this case, we'll all go through the sign up process. So you can use this link, pricing, and then sign up. But if you have an account, you just go straight to the login. So here I don't have an account yet, so we just use the pricing and sign up. Now here, if you want to have more control over your application's domain. So for instance, if you want to add your domain so-and-so.com to it, that one you can go with some of the paid versions, right? But since we are using this for, let's say, a demo, you can just create a beginner account. Okay, just like if you use the paid ones, it gives you more advantage and more processing power as compared to the limited, or let's say the free one. So in this case, we are just going to use the create beginner account. So here I would ask you for your username, email, and then the password. So you can choose any name you prefer. Now, I always use the name of the project as the username. So INV, but you can choose any other name you prefer. Just that if you are going to create the project, normally the link you will share to people shouldn't maybe be your name. Let's say kofi.pythonanywhere.com. It will work, but mostly it doesn't look nice. So that's why I always use the project name for the username. And then here you can enter your email address. So code with donzi at gmail.com. And then you just create a password. You just make sure the password is something strong. And then you can easily record. So I agree to the terms and I just click on the register. So here they are going to send you, let me save it. They are going to send you an email to just verify your email address. So let me just come back to my email. That's the one here. Just click on this link to verify your email. Once you have the email verified, you'll now be able to proceed. All right, so let me close these tabs. Since the project is working, let me close this also. Now I'm going to walk you through the tour so you can just ignore that. All right, so here the next thing we do, we have some tabs. We have the dashboard, we have the consoles, the files, web tags, and then databases. All right, so here we are just going to work with the dashboard, the console, the files, and then the web. We are going to leave these two for now. So what I mostly do is to open these in separate tabs. So I have the dashboard in a separate tab. I have the files, I have the console, and then I have the web, all these in separate tabs. This is what I do so that I don't have to be navigating through different tabs. Now, some people will choose to deploy their projects to GitHub and then they can clone the project using the console. But then if you are not using GitHub, you can still use this approach. You can upload your project directly to the server and then you unzip it using the console or the terminal. It's the same thing. You can easily access your project. But then just that if you are using the GitHub, anytime you make a push from your local terminal, you can just get the update from the console. Right, so from the web, we can add a new web app. So you just click add new web app, add new web app, and then you just use next. Now we choose manual configuration, right? And then you choose the Python version you used for your project. You have to be very careful with this one. You always have to make sure that the version you have on your machine, the one you use for creating your project, that's the same thing you use on the server or when you are deploying your project online. So this is just to make sure that you don't get any package conflict in your project. So this will just give you some time to create the project. Normally it doesn't take that much time. All right, so it's done. So we have our app created. So this is the new name. So WSGI.env.pythonanywhere. So here, if you used your name, that's what you are going to have here. So if I open this in a new tab, this is the message we get, hello world. All right, so here this is just the default welcome screen. Now when you scroll down here, you can see you will need to be renewing your project anytime it expires. Okay, but the good thing about the Python Anywhere is that before the project expires, they are going to send you an email, so you can always reactivate it. Even if it does, always they have an option for you to activate your project again. All right, so below here, we are going to look at them later. All right, so here I always choose to force HTTPS. So just click on this button, toggle this one. That will just make sure that all your links are HTTPS instead of just the HTTP. So even if you type HTTP, it's going to force it to HTTPS. Anytime you want to delete your project too, you can just use this. If you want to disable the project temporarily too, you can use this button here, right? You can also set password for your application. So users will need to provide the username and password before they're able to access your project. So in case you want to restrict access to your files or to your project. Right, so the next thing we'll do is to upload our codes to the Python Anywhere, and then we provide the path to our source code, or let's say the project. So to upload the project, we can go to the Files tab. So remember here, I opened Files in a different tab. So this is the Files tab. So Files, right? So we can upload it. So if you click Upload, it's going to ask you for a file, right? Now I have the file in my document. And then the project name is iWorld. So what I'll do is I'll just zip the project. So if you're on Windows, you can just choose compress to zip folder and then you zip. Yeah. But if you're on Windows 10, I think you'll see something like send to, and then you can choose compress zip folder. Any of this one will zip the project for you. Now, because we can't upload a folder, we will need to upload a file. You can just zip it. So let me go to document and then Django tutorials. All right, so here we have the iWorld project. So you just upload the project here. So depending on the size, it's going to take more time. And then you have to take note of this. You have to make sure that your project size is not that much or not more than the size here, 512. Now we have the project here. We cannot also unzip directly here. We will need to use the console, or let's say the terminal. Now we can create a bash console, or we can create the MySQL terminal. Because we don't have database, there's no need of using this one. We will rather create a bash console. So just click on the bash and it will open this window for you where you can use your terminal just like you do with your computer. All right. Now you can do ls. You can see the project here because it's a Linux based system. Okay. So let me zoom in so that you can see well. All right. So ls to list all your directories. So now we need to unzip this project. So you just type unzip and the name of the project. Okay. You just have to type the name of the project and then you hit enter. So it is going to unzip the project for you. Now if you go back to your files and then reload, you are going to see the project here. So like I said, some people would like to use GitHub to clone the project here. It works fine. But I don't want to make this video long. So I just uploaded it through the file, unzip from the terminal. And then you still have the same thing. So anytime you make changes to, you can choose to upload the project again. And then you just unzip and then use it. Or you can also open the files you changed. So if I open the folder here, you can access all your files. So in case you want to make changes, you can easily do that. So that's the good thing about the Python Anywhere. It allows you to write codes here. You can write your codes and do changes here. When you're done, you can just save and then you reload. All right, but we are not doing that in this session. But that's something you can do. All right, so when you have the project like this, where you can see all these files, just click on your project. And then make sure you can see your database and then your manage.py file. Copy this path. You copy this path, go to the web tab, or you can just open web. Just make sure you're in web. When you scroll down, you are going to see source code. Just paste the path here, and then you check. So when you click here, you just make sure it takes you to your project folder. All right, so let me just go back. You have to make sure that everything works before you proceed, or let's say continue. Now, next thing we need to do is to set up our WSGI configuration file. Now, I would open this in a new tab. So this one allows us to set the WSGI for our project. Now here it has a lot of comments. Okay. So just scroll down to where you can see Django. All right. So here I'll delete the ones at the top. Delete everything at the top. Just make sure you see Django. Now we also have configuration for Flask, but we are not using Flask. So you can delete this as well. Let me zoom in a bit. All right. So here, just select this up to where you can see the import. Up to where you can see the import. Only this part. And then you just uncomment. So use control / or command / to uncomment. Now the next thing we do is to provide the path to our project where the settings.py file exists. Now to get this can be very tricky, but I'm going to give you a shortcut that will make sure that you always get the path right. So you have to navigate, or let's say locate your project. Now the name of the project is iworld_inv. This is the name of my project. So you just have to navigate to your project. Now, when you open the project, make sure you can see all these files, your settings, ESGI, URLs, and then WSGI. So once you see these files, just copy this part. Once you see these files, just copy this part. Okay. Now, when you copy this part, you now go back to the WSGI file. Remove this. You remove that, and then you copy, or let's say you cut the last name, remove the /, and then you paste it here. This is the best shortcut to get your project running. Let me take it again. You go back to your project, make sure you navigate to where you can see your settings, your URLs, WSGI, and then the ASGI file. And then you just copy this path, the path to the settings file. You move back to the WSGI settings, you would have this default path, just delete it and then paste what you copied. Now just cut this iworld_inv. That's the name of my project. Just cut it and then delete the /, remove my insights, and then paste what you copied. So make sure that the name you are putting here is the last thing you copied. You just have to make sure it's the last thing you copied, because that's the direct path to your project settings file. When you are done with this, just click on save. All right. So after saving, you can come back to your web and then you reload. When you open the project in your browser, it's supposed to give you an error. So reloading, okay. So I've already opened it in a new tab. But if you haven't, you can just right click and open in a new tab. Let me refresh. Now when you refresh and then you get this error, it means that you are good to go. Everything worked fine. Now we are getting this error because inside our Django project, we have something we call allowed host. So we just need to add our domain to the allowed host. So back to the files, you can open the settings in a new tab, the settings.py file. So where you have allowed host, just put your domain here. If you have multiple domains, you can use a comma and then you list them. But then if you want to allow all hosts, which is not, let's say, secured or advisable, you can just put an asterisk. But I always prefer that put your domain name here. And then you save. Now, if you reload, so you can use this reload button, or you come back to the web and then you click reload. It all does the same thing. Now, let me refresh this. Now you see we have the project running. Now this is able to run because by default the PythonAnywhere installs, let's say, the common Django libraries for you. So that's why I didn't need to install Django, install like all the packages. But then if you are using additional packages aside like Django, Pillow, and then the rest, you need to install them. The PythonAnywhere already comes with the Django library installed for you. Okay. So here, if you are getting any error, it just simply means that, so if you are getting any error, it could be the package not available. Okay. So I'll give you an example of an error you can get. So let me move to this part. Let me add a package I have not installed. You don't need to do this. I just want to show you how you can identify errors when you are using the Python anywhere. So let's say Django Jasmine. So this is an admin library for Django. So let me save and then reload. So just give it time to reload. Okay, it's done. So now let me refresh the project again. Now you mostly see this, something went wrong. So let me keep refreshing. Let me see. So you get something went wrong. So if you go back to the web tab, you can choose to refresh first. And then you scroll down, you can see error logs. So you can open the error logs in your tab. So anything that went wrong, you are going to see it here. So this is the first one. We got the host not added. Okay. Okay. So let me see. Web refresh. Oh, let me reload again. I just want to get an example of how you can fix an error. All right, so it's not coming here, but mostly that's where you can find the errors under the error log. So if you open error logs, all the errors that went wrong, this where it shows. All right, correct. So now we have the expected error. So you can see here, no module named Django-Jasmine. So this tells you that this package is not installed. So this is something common. So anytime you have an error, you have to go to the web, then you check your error log. So if it's a package error, it's going to give you. All right. So since I'm not using this library, I can just take it out, then save. So cd my project iWorld. Sometimes you can also choose to run your server to make sure everything is on point. So that port is already in use. Let me use a different value. Right, so the project also runs in the terminal. Let me put back the Django Jasmine, save, and then run server here to see. So you see from here to it's able to give you the error, no module named Django Jasmine, just like you would do in your normal terminal. Okay. So anytime you are getting a package error, you can just install that package and then you get your project running. Right. So here, because I used Django and then I used just the pillow for this project, there's no need of doing that much. But then if you have more than one package, it's always advisable to use the requirement.txt file that came with your project. So let me give you an example of how you can generate the requirement.txt file. So back from your terminal, even before you deploy the project, let me break the server. You can use this command, pip freeze, and then use a greater than sign, freeze, greater than sign, and then you write requirements.txt. If freeze requirement.txt. So you do this. Now, if you go back to your project, you're supposed to create a file for you. So this file is called requirement.txt. Now, this text file will just give you all the packages you used in your project. So I didn't use any other package. So the Django and just the pillow. But then if you have more than one package, it's going to list them for you. So use this command, pip freeze greater than sign requirement.txt. Now let me show you how you can use the requirement.txt file on your server. So it's inside our project, so you can see it here. So before you deploy, you can just generate this first, zip, and then you upload. But since I've already uploaded the project, let me just go back to the files, the root directory. So let me go to the root directory. That's where I can see the database and the manage.py. And then let me just upload the requirements file. All right, so here we have the requirement.txt file here. So you can see it here. Now, if you want to install a package from the requirement.txt file, this is what you do. You just use this command pip install -r and then requirement.txt. So this is the command pip install -r requirement.txt. So you hit enter. So this will just install all the packages you have in that txt file and then install for you. So you can just give it time to install, but then that's how you go by installing the packages. Now we have to look at certain things you need to do when you deploy your project online. Now, when you deploy your project online, there are some errors. You make sure you don't make it available to users. So let me delete this. We don't need that. When you deploy your project online, there are certain things you have to turn off. So something like the debug, you have to turn it off. But then when you turn off debug too, sometimes it comes with its own errors. Let me reload the project again. All right. All right. So we have the project running. But then check something. Let me just log in. Now, users are not supposed to see this. So if I bring a forward slash and then enter a path that's not there, users are not supposed to see this. So this one will expose all the URLs you have in your project. So what you have to do is that you have to turn off debug. So you go back to your settings.py file, and then you change this debug to false. In your project, you are going to have a comment that you need to turn this off in production. So you can turn it off. So you save the project, and then you can reload. Now you can just also create something you call custom handlers for this 404 and then 5,000 errors. So now instead of giving the user that error, it's showing that's not found, the requested resource was not found on this server. So you can create a nice 404 page to display to the user. If the server error, you can just create a nice page forbidding the rest. You can create them. So now let's make sure that it doesn't expose part of your code anytime something goes wrong in your project. So that's something you have to take note of. So anytime you are deploying, make sure you set your debug to false. Now, if I'm using media files here, sometimes the media files might not work. And then sometimes the static files might not work. So you have to add something we call white noise to your installed apps. So you go back to your installed apps and then you add white noise to it. So you add white noise and then you just save. So white noise, you need to install it, else you'd get an error, the package you need to install. So back to your terminal, then you do pip install white noise. White, all right, I think I made a typo. White noise, all right. So you install this package and then we'll copy something from W3 schools. So just type white noise and then W3 schools, W3 schools. So Django white noise. Right, so here it gives you the command we just typed, so you can just ignore that. So we need this. Copy this, and then you go back to your project. Under your middleware, make sure that's the last thing you are pasting. So after adding a white noise, you are now good to go. So just copy white noise middleware dot white noise middleware. And then inside your settings, make sure that's the last thing you are pasting in your middleware. And then make sure that there's a comma here too as well. Now we are going to make use of the static root. So this variable we created and then this folder called static files. Saving this and then back to our web. Now for PythonAnywhere, it has something we call static files. This is where we provide the path to our static files. Okay. Now let me show you how to find your static files. So we have a folder called static. That's where our static files are. But for now, our static files are working in the project, so you might feel there's no need of doing this. But then if you try to access your Django admin page, you realize that it doesn't have any styles because the static files for this project or the Django admin is not inside the static file folder we created. So that's why we added the static root and the static files folder. Now we are going to run a single command that would collect all the static files we have in our Django project and save it to the folder name we provided here. So it is the same thing if you are deploying it to a VPS server. So here we do this command python manage.py. You have to make sure that you are inside your project to access the manage.py file. And then you do collect static. So python manage.py collect static. Then you hit enter. Right, so you can see 130 static files copied to the directory we provided. So what you do is that just copy this part. You copy this back to your web, and then where we have directory, just paste that here, and then you save. So that's the path to our static file. But we have something called URL. So you have to provide a URL as well. And then you check this. Now we'll do same for media files. So if your project has pictures and the rest where people upload from the Django admin, you have to make sure you provide this. Now let's get the path to media files. So back to our project, because I set it to be based there, you can just copy this. Because I don't have project images uploaded for the product, I don't have the media folder here. But then if your project has the media folder, you can just open it and then copy the part you have here. Or you can just copy just this one back to your web directory and then just bring a / and the name of the folder you use in your settings.py file. So in my case, it was media. So if you have media files, this way to be looking for them. And then your static files will be now located here. So lastly, you can just reload your project. Once it's done reloading, you can just test it out to make sure everything works fine. Right, so here, let me reload. And then you can see the static files are now working. All right, so this is how you can deploy a Django project to PythonAnywhere. So if you have any other question, you can just leave that in the comment section below. If you like the video, you can like, you can share, and then you can subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.